So good afternoon, everyone, or good morning for those of you from the Eastern Coast. I feel very privileged to open our online international conference, Digital Holocaust Memory from the Margins, Practices, Places, and Narratives. I would like to first thank the Esther and Sydney Rabb Center for Holocaust and Revival Studies at Ben Gurion University of the Negev, the Bergida Family Foundation for their support of Rabb activities, and the Renia Pearl Estate for their generous donation that will enable the continuation and expansion of Holocaust teaching at Ben Gurion University of the Negev. I would also like to thank my colleagues at the conference academic committee, Jackie Feldman, Noam Tirosh, and Norma Musi, and of course, Azri Amram, Rabb Center's administrator, for their partnership and hard work in organizing this important gathering. When we first started thinking about a possible conference, the world was at the COVID-19 outbreak, and we already saw how Holocaust memory agents were adjusting into an online-only world. It was clear to us that what we are experiencing today will be remembered as a turning point in the global Holocaust consciousness of the 21st century. And while Holocaust memory did not become digital in 2020, the current outbreak of COVID-19 and the rapid digitalization that followed became a milestone, a symbol that marks the culmination of the global and digital aspects of current Holocaust memory and education culture into a new culture of remembrance. Yesterday, we had the pleasure of hearing a fascinating keynote lecture from Victoria Walden. And thank you, Victoria, for this illuminating lecture yesterday, which gave us all a broad and very up-to-date map of the digital aspects of Holocaust memory. When we planned this conference, we thought that it is not enough to focus on the digital aspects of Holocaust memory. Working together, our focus soon shifted to focus on the ways in which such digitalization is enabling discussions about marginalized Holocaust narratives. Our panels today and tomorrow will hopefully touch some directly, some indirectly on these aspects. Before giving the floor to our chair that I will present soon, I would like to remind us that we have two sessions today with a short 30-minute break between them. In each panel, each panelist will have no more than 15 minutes for the presentation, and we will then turn to around 30 minutes of Q&A. We can leave the microphone open between two sessions for individual discussions. Our first panel for today, titled Embodiment, Witnessing, and Social Media, will be chaired by Kobi Kabalek from Penn State University. Kobi is an assistant professor of Holocaust Studies and Visual Studies, Germanic and Slavic languages, and literature and Jewish studies. His current research explores marginalized and extreme phenomena in Holocaust testimonies, historical writing, and popular culture, with special attention to the role of fantasy, imagination, and horror. Our second panel for today, that will start immediately after our break, is titled The COVID-19 Crisis and the Digital Response, and will be chaired by Daniela Ozetsky Stern from the Western Galilee College. Daniela is a postdoctoral researcher at the Institute of Holocaust Research at Bar-Ilan University and a lecturer at the Holocaust Studies program of Western Galilee College. Her research focuses on the Holocaust in Lithuania and the Jewish resistance. Since the COVID-19 crisis started, Daniela and I started working together as the online team of the Western Galilee College Holocaust program that organizes monthly virtual virtual conversation with Holocaust researchers. So without further ado, Kobi, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Ronnie. Thanks thanks to the organizers for this workshop. I'm really looking forward, and I'm also very happy to see so many friends and colleagues here or there. It's kind of weird to talk to you far away. Yeah, we need to meet. So today we're going to start with the, as Ronnie said, with the first actual paper series with the first panel. The first panel is entitled Embodiment, Witnessing in Social Media, and we have quite an interesting array of scholarly approaches. I'm going to introduce the speakers, and we have quite a lot of speakers for this panel, so bear with me. I'm going to introduce the speakers just before every paper, and then we'll go directly to it. So again, thanks a lot, and I'm looking forward to hearing your papers. The first one is by Tobias Ebbrecht-Hartmann and Tom Divon. Tobias is a lecturer for visual culture, film and German studies at the Department of Communication and Journalism and at the European Forum in the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He holds a PhD from the Freie Universität Berlin in film studies and teaches and publishes on cinematic, digital and social media memory of the Holocaust for quite a lot of years now. I don't think that people who actually deal with visual memory, especially cinematic memory of the Holocaust, can do without some of his work. I know that I can't. And he's the author of a study on cinematic narrations of the Holocaust and published in various journals. You can see it all further on. He's now also a consortium member of the Horizon 2020 project, History of the Holocaust, Rethinking Curation in the Digital Age. And Tom Divon is a research student in the field of digital media, culture and communication in the same department, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He holds a master's degree in communication and new media and a BA in communication and journalism, both from the IDC at Herzliya. And his research and education areas include memory studies, social media studies, visual arts and cultural studies. Topics that are very much relevant for all of us. So please, Tobias and Tom, we're looking forward.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. Just a second. Yeah. Great. So hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. Thank you for having us. In the next 15 minutes, you will encounter the fascinating world of TikTok, where it is possible to practice memory work through reenacting Holocaust memories in #POV challenges, a process we will, of course, further elaborate on. But before that, a brief introduction to this stimulating new social media platform. So TikTok is a tale of two apps, Douyin in China and Musical.ly in the States, both short-form video platforms under Chinese control. TikTok was launched as an attempt of the Chinese to become dominant in international markets. They targeted Musical.ly, being the market-leading short-form video platforms in the USA, and rebranded it to what we know today as TikTok. And why Douyin and TikTok are so popular? Well, this is mainly because of the platform's unique infrastructure, composing what describes as a virtual playground. What started as a platform that offers users to post videos of themselves while lip-syncing songs grew very fast into the creative canvas of self-made short looping videos presenting dance routines, science, comedy, fantasy, visual memes, and you name it. So while detouring market giants like Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram, TikTok attracted millions of users at a dazzling pace. And those numbers, unsurprisingly, were skyrocketing during the coronavirus pandemic. So being hijacked by Zoomers, which are the Gen Z users, more of this age group was joining TikTok, leaving the millennials on other user-generated video platforms, such as Instagram and YouTube. The result, turns this virtual playground into a generational habitat for Zoomers, highly corresponding with their dominant characteristics. Being recognized as the true online generation, the first true online generation that mediates life through a mobile screen, Zoomers have a strong tendency for expressiveness, desire to create, high level of social awareness, and all of those tied with their short span attention. So TikTok designers match the app infrastructure to those habits, encouraging TikTokers to incorporate music samples, split screens, filters, quick cuts, speed controls, GIFs, virtual effects, live stream, augmented reality, and an endless list of features, helping you to be the most creative you can be, according to TikTok's vision. So all of those creations are draining into TikTok's favorite spot, which is the For You page. Once you open the app, it functions as the landing place, personalized according to the user's preferences. TikTokers are scrolling through the Explorer section every day as it encourages the users to actively seek out, participate, and engage with momentary viral content in order to remain visible to others. Being attentive to the Explorer will credit the user with the golden ticket for the For You page. So creators can embed themselves on the For You page with the help of digital connectors, such as conceptual hashtags or searchable keywords, creative filters, popular audio memes, and narrative memes, which are popular as part of a current trend. So this page is what really distinguishes TikTok from other platforms, as it provides two crucial insights that contradict familiar social media logics. One, you do not need friends online to become a star on TikTok. Just feed the algorithm with your engaging creative content, and the exposure will come along. And two, TikTokers are pushing aside old habits of highly curated, Instagrammable aesthetics, giving rise to the Generation Z everydayness narrative, as they invite us to their bedrooms, allowing us to pick on their minute-by-minute authentic fragments of life. So it is no surprise that the TikTokers that we interviewed emphasize the engaging potential of the platform for instant reflections, saying that you can really do a lot out of very little on TikTok.
One of the most popular trends circulating widely on the For You page is the #POV challenge. Originating from the app's playful character that encourages imitating and improving performances of other users, those videos demonstrate an interesting maturation of TikTokers in response to the platform's unique affordances, which we just described. Performing for others the particular perspective of victims of violent incidents, the #POV challenge offers engaging ways to witness experiences of those that would usually be absent from the app's virtual playground. So the first POV video here, for instance, raises awareness for domestic violence, mainly by contrasting the love song lyrics, which we hear here, with revealing insignia of physical violence. So let's see it.
Oh, he treats me with respect. He says he loves me all the time. He calls me 15 times a day. He likes to make sure that I'm fine. You know, I've never met a man who's made me feel quite so secure. He's not like all them other boys. They're all so dumb.
The second video refers to the terror attacks from September 11, 2001. Showcasing, as you will see, elaborate makeup efforts. The video offers a way for interacting with the formative event of our present that nevertheless for the members of Generation Z is not anymore part of their biographical experience. The third video uses the #POV challenge as a vehicle for dealing with the collective fear of school shootings, of course a topic which really bothers this generation, mainly by confronting the intimate selfie view of the TikTok creator with the disturbing and frightening shouting atmosphere sound in the background. Such forms of utilization of role-playing and acting through are an important element of many video contributions to the hashtag POVs challenges. The POV challenge, the POV in the POV challenge refers to the mode of self-documentation in which TikTokers convey an unusual first-person perspective, which allows them to emphatically engage with a multitude of human experiences. The challenge aspect is a performative role-play ritual, which is composed of 3 elements: text, sound, and movement. The challenge aspect comes into play when TikTokers actively choose to participate in a specific trending POV on the For You page with their own version of sampling music, filters, quick cuts, and so on. The POV challenges are interconnected by a hashtag. This hashtag is mnemonically connecting their POVs and motivating TikTokers to feed the For You page algorithm with the most creative and engaging creations in return for exposure. Intersecting visual techniques of witnessing and playful ritualistic practice, the POV challenge stimulates the creative engagement with social topics and historical events. Or as one of the TikTokers we interviewed explained, all TikTokers strive for the For You, and the way to get there is by being provocative, attentive, aware of trends, and insisting on personal interpretations. In the specific context of Holocaust memory, the format of the POV challenge conflicted with certain established norms of commemorating the Holocaust. Last summer, an attempt of TikTokers to deal with fictionalized memories from the Holocaust in a challenge that contained POV shots of Holocaust victims in heaven caused a public outcry. Memorials distanced themselves from these videos, while social media users and influencers publicly attacked the creators as, quote, disgusting human beings, and, quote, ill-informed and woefully ignorant, and most public voices then demanded to take down the videos and apologize to the viewers. This ignored the apparent, though maybe failed, attempt of the creators to actually engage with the memory of the Holocaust in their natural social environment. Silencing those creators, however, might have a contrary effect. Instead of fostering different approaches to address Holocaust memory on TikTok, those who were intimidated and offended by the public will most likely never engage with this topic again. Correspondingly, for instance, the TikToker Kelly Y declared, quote, I'm sorry it took me so long to take down the video, and I ask that you forgive me as I made a huge mistake and learned from it. However, on a closer look, these and other Holocaust-related POVs reveal astonishingly complex approaches to Holocaust memory.
So now let's see some of our observation here. So we have 3 POV Holocaust memes. TikTokers performed 3 different yet connected imaginative reenactments in which they mediated prosthetic memories in a series of short fragments of Holocaust-related memes. So we had testimony from heaven, TikTokers posing as dead Holocaust victims, testifying from heaven after being murdered by the Nazis. Punishment in past and present. TikTokers act as prisoners in the present who are punished and transferred to concentration camps in the past. And escape to the future, where TikTokers merge the 30s and the 40s with the 2020 in a complex temporal interplay in which Holocaust victims get the chance for a momentary escape from the horrifying present, which is the 30s, and to an imagined future, which is 2020. In our theoretical attempts to conceptualize the hashtag POV challenge as an act of memory, we used a multimodal approach that was most suited for the unpacking embodied communicative forms. A special focus is given on TikTokers' use of the platform's feature, which enables a more interactive experience with the past. So now let's see some examples from each of the Holocaust memes, and then we'll mediate some observations. So a taste of our observation that we've collected from analyzing 53 of those videos. So you can see here time travel performance with an in-app transitional feature. Well, TikTokers are utilizing a highly popular feature, allowing their transition to the past. By that, TikTokers are interplaying with concept of time, space, and distance, while bouncing through past and present as collided dimension and crossing an interlinked reality and heaven. This transitional feature exposes some of the temporal, nonlinear, and unstable nature of memory trajectories on TikTok. And as you notice, the music functions here as a transitionary tool, while in accordance with Bruno Mars's hit, TikTokers transferred their mediated self into heaven, which is the future, as the unfortunate ones could not stay because they were locked out of heaven and were sent back to the Holocaust, which is the present. So this relation between past and present gets a more profound meaning, as one of the TikTokers claimed that we tend to forget about the past, although it keeps on looping with the present, just as TikTok videos does, while saying that history doesn't belong to history because everything is happening again. History is in the present. Another observation relates to authenticity, as TikTokers depict the traumatizing nature of the events using Holocaust-related symbols throughout their videos. So to convey fragmented narrative of incomplete stories by allowing us a momentary peek to an unstructured memory, they're conveying a sporadic reflection with no clear beginning, a middle, or an end. Those memories seem to be stuck in an endless loop, while TikTok's video never stop unless the user actively chooses to put an end to what actually is a never-ending memory. So you can see here the TikTokers utilizing the POV for remediations of memory fragments in an attempt to convey the authenticity of a real situation, demonstrating a prominent theme of victimization, in which they reenact persecuted, abused, and terrified Jews in different situations. So TikTokers are utilizing the platform textual feature to communicate dates and locations, allowing a connection to actual historical events, such as August 4, 1944, as one of the TikTokers symbolically relived the moments of the arrest of the iconic Anne Frank family in their secret annex, or May 8, 1945, symbolizing the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany. And all of those memories are being performed with Holocaust-related costumes and makeup as an attempt to validate their reenactments. You can see ragged clothes, striped concentration camp uniforms and yellow stars, or face makeup that mimics cuts, bruises, and skinniness. And those elements were applied with TikTokers' emotive language, highly demonstrated by their facial expressions as they convey profound frustration, and their use of the body as a performative tool while running, hiding, resisting, and other movements that embody a moment of memory. At last, their lack of human voice, wrapped within the contrasting musical experience, communicates high volumes of the victim's feeling of helplessness. So what can be seen as an empathic way to remediate prosthetic memories can find support by one of our interviewees saying that she recalled the Holocaust picture, which got into her mind, showing an anonymous woman figure with a skinny face, deep shock expression, wishes to disappear to stop the pain. And at last, we can witness the integration of iconic imagery while using the green screen function. This feature establishes a fascinating multi-layered experience of referential spaces to past atrocities. TikTokers are using the green screen function for background manipulation, implementing symbolic Holocaust images and immersing themselves into historical environments, such as Auschwitz-Birkenau or a ghetto. Their immersive use of those spaces utilized by the green screen enables the remediation of TikTokers' pre-existing cultural knowledge of Holocaust images, as those images are now migrating into new interpretive contexts.
To conclude, as one of the TikTok creators we interviewed said, TikTok provides a space that has the potential to raise an awareness to crucial topics. This also includes the memory of the Holocaust. Similar to other platforms such as Instagram, this space is characterized by creative forms of engagement. TikTok creators therefore adopted aesthetics of self-witnessing as well as the point of view perspective that emphasizes the embeddedness of the witness in the events. What was still separated as two different, though related aesthetic practices, for example, in a project like Ever Stories, is now merged in the TikTok challenges. The selfie aesthetic functions here as a point of view shot, which establishes the point of view for the users by positioning them, the performing creators as the confrontational selfie shot of a different self. The alliance with time travel narratives and other modes of temporal dissonance does further emphasize this encounter of the platform's visitor with a different self in a different time that engages the viewers in a virtual dialogue. The controversies actually were a significant part of this dialogue and of this practice of doing memory. As one of the interviewers said, a POV with conflicted reactions means that you did something good, that you touched people. In doing so, TikTok turns into a learning tool that should be taken seriously, also by established institutions in the field of Holocaust commemoration and education. Next to the most important social and political conflicts of this decade, also the Holocaust became a subject of negotiation within the Generation Z's process of politicization. School sucks in so many ways, a TikToker told us, especially in providing us with curiosity for knowledge. The POVs on TikTok offer a unique and highly dialogical approach to social reality as well as to history and memory. The TikTok Holocaust controversy proved that, as another interviewee said, Holocaust institutions and TikTokers don't speak the same language. This should motivate different approaches to the performance of memory on social media in general and on TikTok in particular. Concluding with a thought-provoking statement of this interviewee, this could then help to, quote, find ways to communicate with my generation. We should not be scared from commemorating the Holocaust on TikTok. This platform has proven itself to be an educational tool for my generation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. This was fascinating. I have just one question. You were a bit over time, about 5 minutes. And I know the examples are great. And I love the examples. I want to see all of them. But just try, at least, if all of us want to have some kind of an awesome discussion at the end of this presentation, please choose wisely which examples you want to focus on, and don't please don't show us all of them. And now I'll just jump to the next presentation. Yes, so the next presentation, again, hi there, is by Lea David. Lea David is an assistant professor and Ad Astra fellow at the School of Sociology, University College Dublin. She's a comparative historical sociologist with a strong interdisciplinary background in cultural anthropology and history. She held several postdoctoral fellowships, a very distinguished one, and her book from 2020, The Past Can't Heal Us, The Dangers of Mandating Memory in the Name of Human Rights, was published with Cambridge University Press, and I highly recommend it, as well as other works by by Leah. Today, she will speak about a format or a system failure, E-Holocaust memory, the winners and the losers. Leah, please.
Okay. Okay, now something completely different. And just, Kobi, can you tell me if you can hear me? You're the only one I can see. Yeah, okay, great. So you can see my title is slightly pompous because at the time I was not actually sure what I'm going to talk about. But I want to take you to another journey in this very brief lecture. Just a second. See something. Okay, so I want to talk actually about this object-human relationship. And by the end of this presentation, I want to show actually why this is so important. And obviously, this is something that is missing from this digital Holocaust memory platform. And I want to point out some possible pitfalls to taking out this object-human relationship in relationship to Holocaust memory or genocide memory in broadly speaking and in general. So in the past months, I was actually starting a kind of a new research project and a big journey, and I started being very much invested in understanding this object-human relationship. And in a second, I will explain you why I think that matters beyond what we know actually and how actually literature is approaching this subject. So to start with, objects are often understood as a creative part of social life, as creating or subverting the values attached to human relations, or as a prosthetic extension of ourselves. Obviously, objects are central to many different disciplines, archaeology, history, forensics, and each discipline is having different disciplinary approach and use of those objects. And as we know in anthropology and sociology, objects have mainly been considered in two ways, either as commodities or as gifts. And here I want to take us to another journey that I think it is relevant, and it does not apply to this narrow sociological and anthropological approach to objects as commodities and gifts. So generally speaking, we have two approaches, the network approach to objects, where artifacts and objects are seen as a node in a wider network in which they act as one particular node, or the approach I'm going to take here, the biographic approach to objects that links between people and things, the way meanings and values are accumulated and transformed. And now I want to talk about something that I call desire objects. Desire objects are crucial to everything that has to do with the processes of memorialization, museum culture, heritage, genocide, and Holocaust. So what are those desire objects? Objects and personal items of the deceased or killed are often understood as the last tangible link with a dead person. And suddenly those items start gathering emotions much beyond their mundane function. I will explain this. Now, where does it come, this idea for desire object? Desire objects instigate emotional response that reflects different sorts of desires for the loved ones to come back from the dead, or to prolong their afterlife through replacement of the unjust death in their personal items, to mend their unjust death, and to come with peace in their sudden and violent passing. So desire objects are actually emergent sites of feelings that are capable of triggering bodily reactions and emotional responses, which is crucial to our to the way in which we actually today respond and understand the memory. Desire objects have distinct and unique biographies. And I want to talk about those biographies a bit. So desire objects and emotional energy, and you will see actually what I do here, I play with the way in which desire objects travel through different social spheres, and how in those different social spheres, actually, there are two parameters that are changing all the time. One is emotional energy that they are producing, or or pushing people to feel something through those objects. And the other thing is their own value, how their value is changing once they move from one sphere to another. So first, to understand again desire objects, when we talk, I want to just for you to understand specifically what does it mean. The event of dying is not regarded as part of a natural cycle of life. This means that events of death cannot be categorized as happened due to natural causes such as catastrophes, pandemics, eruptions, or earthquakes, or whatever, because they have to involve a guilty party, an intention, a violent act, and a deep feeling that injustice has been done. So those objects have to actually fill in all those four criteria. Secondly, those objects provide a direct link to the event of the atrocity, meaning somehow they were actually witnessing the event. This means that the event is still part of a living memory, and those immediately affected are themselves direct carriers of the memory of an event. The desire objects will accumulate more emotional energy when the event of the violent killing is closer to the life of the survivors. As more as the event becomes distant and its memory is narrated by the following generations, such as the Holocaust, the desire object's emotional energy will decrease. This is also important. I will explain why. Objects founders are really rare, unique, and their survival innates the instant link between the killed and the act of killing. Less desire objects available, more will those accumulate emotional energy. So this is a simple principle. If we have less of something, it is going to be more valuable, and it will push for a further or stronger emotional energy with people who actually react to those objects. And finally, objects found in the sites of atrocities or directly connected to the event that can be traced in their own, that can be traced to their owners, that can be closely associated to those killed in event. Meaning, if we found an object and it could be traced to its owner and not just stays as an object without their own owners, it means that this object is going to be potentially will have produce more emotional energy. Such connection provides to be highly significant, and the link with the owner of the object almost instantly becomes understood as a bridge that carries a myriad attributes that ascribe a particular power to connect the life and death of a person. Hence, they're associated with highly intense emotions. So what do I mean by that? Let's take a look at this picture. All those images are actually what I describe here as desire objects. They're all instantly associated with some event of atrocity, maybe Holocaust, maybe genocide, maybe some other, we cannot know from those pictures, although I know where those pictures are taken from. And we also see that once we can bring those objects back to their owners or survivors, they will have potentially, they will be able to produce more emotional energy. And in a second, I will explain why that matters. So now let's go to biographies of those desired objects. It is amazingly rich, and each of those objects that we now can see, for example, in museums, have their own distinct biographies. And we see, for example, that those desire objects appear from the depth of dead pits, muddy forest, idyllic hills, mass graves, murky rivers, abandoned prisons, schools, churches, factories, shelters, from both unexpected and remarkably central places, carrying secrets of torture, agony, suffering, execution, and death. And this is amazing because I started following different objects to understand their own biographies. And we see how actually in this, what I call first limbo stage meaning that those objects are being rediscovered, but their destiny is far from secure because each of those objects might have completely different destiny. So sometimes they're being saved, they're being stored, they're being used as evidence in the court. Most of those objects, especially if we talk about the recent Holocaust, genocides, we are actually talking about those objects that are being used in, as an evidence, but sometimes they're being disposed or recovered once again. And we see, for example, thousands and thousands of such objects that are being completely destroyed because they have the core does not have any use of them anymore, and they never actually find their initial home or their original owners, and they never come back to their owners. But sometimes, and this is the small amount of those objects that we can talk about shoes or muddy clothes, we can talk about some personal items, some small boxes, watches, etc., etc. Sometimes they end up finding their owners, or finding this watch might be found in a mass grave and will end up being with a wife who survived this this genocide, and it will immediately be associated as something that is almost sacred in a way. So those objects, once they come back to their owners or survivors, immediately they induce contested feelings and very strong emotional energy, from immense happiness that finally you have something that belonged to your late husband who was tortured and killed and disappeared, or to hope that actually maybe he's still alive, to fear and anger and disgust and sadness and devastation and anxiety, and many other feelings. And we see when we follow those objects, we see such a great amount of reactions, actually, how people relate to those objects, but we always see very, very strong emotional energy. Then those people keep those objects in very intimate places, sometimes openly in a cupboard, sometimes in the wall, sometimes hidden in a drawer. So there are many ways actually to relate on a personal level to those objects. Sometimes they are used as melancholy objects for bereavement, and sometimes they decide to donate those objects. So once they donate, and there are many reasons, I cannot get into it now, there are many reasons why yes or no, they donate those objects to public spaces, to public spheres. And then this is another circle and journey continues for those specific desire objects that they now are being donated often to museums, collections, and exhibitions. And what is happening here? When we see it in a private space, we are actually seeing that this emotional energy on a personal level is very high, because once someone sees something, he can immediately see his own life through that object, the happy memories. There is everything, one object that is very personal and it belonged to someone who disappeared, actually is pushing those emotions, because every life story can be narrated through that object. But what happens once those objects are being taken away from that personal private memory? Now they need to be narrated, they need to be sequenced, they need to be contextualized to trigger emotional energy. So emotional energy is naturally going down. But once we put it in those sterile museum or exhibition places, there are many tools and ways to actually manipulate those objects in order to provoke certain emotional reaction that you want to see once the audience that has no direct link to that specific object is going to experience. So we see, for example, we will put those clothes in different boxes with specific lighting. They're sequencing the way we move from one object to another. Everything that is actually happening in this space is meant to provoke emotional reaction, emotional energy that is supposed to be translated into emotional labor. And here, just a small remark, I'm using those notions by Randall Collins and Arlie Hochschild, but I will not talk more about it. This is very important because emotional labor can be, at the end of the day, be translated into certain norms and values. And that is where I want to go with this, but again, I will not talk about it here. Then we see this authenticity and uniqueness, again, how those objects are changing their value. If at the private sphere, their value was for the owners of that object, here they become a part of a bigger story. They become a link, they become another sequence in this bigger picture that we want to hear or we want to understand. And of course, when we talk about public spaces, we are talking about relatively controlled educational messaging. Everything here, the whole manipulation, and by the way, there are no greater manipulations than museums, because everything is made in a way to link this cognitively, emotionally, and provoke us to think about certain things in a certain way. What happens now with the desire object and their value? As I said, there are two different parameters: emotional energy they're going to initiate, and their value that is changing once they're moving from one object to another, from one sphere to another. The value of desire objects will change during their lifespan via their circulation in different social spheres and regimes of values. So if we take a look, for example, of this shoe, there is a certain value that was, again, of course, beyond that commercial value of an object itself as a shoe, and it has a value for a personal, for owners or for a family of the deceased. Once we put it in a public sphere, this shoe is unique, but then again, we will put it in as a collective statement. This shoe is just one sequence out of many other shoes. So the value of that shoes is being transformed. And by the end of the day, if successful, those desire objects have a potential to be transformed into symbols. So meaning now if we see all this pile of shoes, we instantly can translate it in many other symbols, in this case related to Holocaust. So this is what is being used at the end of the day in a digital form of the Holocaust memory. We have those objects having those different biographies, and becoming, many of those never, but some becoming actually understood as symbols. So if we talk about desire objects, we are actually talking about this emotional energy and value that is emotional energy that is decreasing and increasing, and value that is changing through discursive practices and performative practices. Then we see how this emotional energy and value are changing with transition from private to public spaces, where in public spaces, we see this relatively controlled messaging. And in this sense, we are talking about messaging of human rights and how actually to connect all those events to human rights, although sometimes those messages are being hijacked for other means and other ideological frameworks. And here I want to start finishing, changing a format, changing a system. So what happens once we have those objects disappearing completely, and this transition from face-to-face to digital media, face-to-face bodily experience in which people can actually be in the same space and react. Again, I didn't talk about it, but there is plenty of research about how people react to those objects and what is happening in this interaction and between themselves and between them and those objects in those spaces. And then if we go back to this previous presentation, what can we tell about emotional energy? Who is actually here a consumer? What kind of energy we can see there? What is the value of this? And this is important again, because again, I didn't talk about it, but it really goes into this social capital. What are those values that are being produced through those images? And at the end, what we see here that we have minimal control over messaging, and that is exactly once we escape all these biographies of objects and they transform into symbols. Those symbols are being used for all kinds of purposes, and there is zero control actually how people at the end will behave or will what kind of memory we will get. So at the end, the whole question for me is, what is the memory in this case of the Holocaust that we want to preserve? Is it just a memory, any memory, or is there some educational side to it? And just to finish with some questions about object-human relationship in digital spheres, the loss of human interaction and face-to-face bodily encounter is very, I think, important because it flattens everything. And we see, again, different kinds of manipulations, but still we don't have this emotional reaction that is that we can see in spaces where people meet, actually really meet, not like this virtually. The loss of setting, sequencing, narrational context. Again, that is something that in museums or exhibition spaces can be controlled until certain, not completely, of course, but still controlling it, means actually trying to understand the outcome of that sequence and what kind of memory we want to end up having, or what kind of norms and values we want to promote. And the loss of emotional energy, I said that already. Again, we see this changing value, the desire objects transform into symbols and discourses. And finally, we'd end up with this appropriation, uses, misuses of symbols and discourses. So memory is there, but what kind of a memory is not clear. We will end up with symbols and discourses and ideological.
Yeah, we have to, I'm sorry, we have to stop. We have to stop.
Okay, so those are just my last slides. So all this.
Yeah, so just take a look at that. We are all fast readers. Thank you so much. Lea, we have to go to the next.
No, wait, I just need to stop. Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we learned some things. Thank you so much. I think it was a great combination of papers from a real, true interdisciplinary perspective, and we also learned quite a lot about time. Our next speakers are both from the University of Dayton. Katharine Schreyer, who is an advanced undergraduate studying history and music, and Paul Morrow, who is postdoctoral fellow at the University of Dayton and whose research and teaching interests are in Holocaust and genocide studies, and his book on conscionable crimes: How Norms Explain and Constrain Mass Atrocities was published by MIT Press last year. We are looking forward to hearing your paper.
Thank you, and thanks to the organizers, thanks to the previous two presenters. Thanks particularly to Tobias and Tom, who gave a lot of the background information about TikTok, the platform, the format, and some of the aesthetics, and introduced us to this idea of multimodal analysis. So as mentioned, Katie and I come from a human rights center. The focus of our presentation picks up, I think, directly where Leah's left off, which is thinking about how can digital platforms, in our case, and TikTok particularly, be used for advocacy purposes, for human rights purposes, for mass atrocity and genocide prevention purposes, connecting with some of the memory frames that Tom and Tobias mentioned, but I think broadening out that conversation. I'm going to skip through some of the initial material we had about this controversy because we wanted to highlight at the beginning this theme of marginality, which Victoria highlighted yesterday. It hasn't come up as much today so far. One way in which TikTok videos that try to engage in Holocaust education or advocacy around human rights are marginal is that they can just be banned or removed from the platform. But there are several other ways in which these kinds of videos are marginal, and we tried to provide an inventory here. I'm sure you can think of more. There are structural features of TikTok, which Tom and Tobias gave an excellent overview of, that encourage users to borrow content, especially songs and images, from videos that are on unrelated and often really lighthearted themes. The Welcome to Heaven song is a good example that was mentioned in one of their slides, where that song is used for all sorts of TikTok videos, but has been used for some of the Holocaust challenge videos as well. There are allegations of censorship by the platform owner of content addressing current human rights abuses, such as genocide against the Uyghurs in China. And in general, it's hard to know whether there's censorship happening because the algorithm is kind of a black box. So you don't know, based on your geographical position, your preferences, other demographic features, whether something's actually being censored, so you're not finding it on TikTok, or whether it's just not being recommended to you. The third point, my thinking about this has transformed a bit since Victoria's presentation yesterday. The apparently ephemeral nature of even the most popular TikTok videos, which seem to leave little lasting imprint. I think that Victoria's talk about the entangled nature of digital users' relationship to content and then becoming creators should cause us to think a little bit more about, are these actually ephemeral, or is that a sort of mischaracterization of what's going on? But apparently they do less work than something like the Kony 2012 campaign, for example, which you might remember, a famous viral advocacy campaign on different platforms. And then a point that Tobias and Tom raised briefly, but that we'll try to go into a bit more, hesitation by established institutions like museums, memorials, and research centers to create high quality native content for TikTok. As Victoria mentioned, many of these institutions have used their various social platforms in sort of broadcast formats rather than a specifically social media content. But in the case of TikTok, it's even more restricted than that. Many of these institutions have been hesitant to engage on TikTok in the first place, as we found. We'll come back to that point at the very end. So the plan of our presentation is as follows. I'm going to hand things over to Katie. She's going to analyze 5 different kinds of Holocaust-related content available on TikTok. I was watching with eager anticipation, but in fact, none of the videos that we're going to show stills of were included in Tobias and Tom's presentation. That might be part of their larger data set. For sake of time and technology, we're not going to play any of the videos, but Katie will try to give a characterization of the sort of multimodal character. Then I'm going to very briefly situate TikTok videos within a broader universe of visual materials for Holocaust education and advocacy. And then we'll end by trying to clarify kinds of advocacy TikTok might be well suited for, as well as kinds for which it's apparently a bad fit. So with that, Katie, I'm going to hand things over to you, but I'll keep progressing the slides for you.
Thank you. So in my section, we're going to talk about the 5 different varieties of Holocaust-related videos on TikTok that we have analyzed in this project. The first is musical joke videos that do not attempt advocacy or to educate their viewers at all. They include punchlines based on popular songs, such as changing the lyrics to Lizzo's Juice from Gotta Blame It on the Juice to Please Don't Blame It on the Jews, which can be seen in these first 2 screenshots. And the third screenshot, a song is, oh, sorry. Can you guys hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. In the third video, the lyrics to Homage by Mile High Club are used to make a pun about the numbers tattooed onto Jewish victims of the Holocaust arms. And the caption is used is POV, I ask for a Jewish girl's number. Even though these videos are not serious, songs still play an important part in other more serious videos. I'm sorry, am I still too quiet? Okay. The second category of videos we analyzed are visits to memorials and sites of destruction. Even though these videos are not unique to TikTok and they are not professionally recorded, they're interesting because users are able to add many layers of text to create a narrative and add meaning to the videos, such as seen in the screenshots from this video, where text is added at different points in the video, as well as in the caption, never forget the Holocaust, with a number of hashtags. Hashtags are important because they allow users to find content more easily, as stated by Ludengren in her article about Instagram and the uses of Instagram for Holocaust content. She states that visitors can exercise creative input, applying filters to historicize images or hashtags to archive them. When we surveyed some TikTok users who have created Holocaust-related content on TikTok and engaged with it, one of them stated that The hashtag feature is a good one because we can use specific hashtags to not only reach audiences interested in Holocaust education, but make them easier to access all in one place. Just a simple search can bring them all up under a certain hashtag. This TikTok also uses song to create meaning. In this one, it is How to Save a Life by The Fray, which adds another layer to the narrative the user is creating. The third category is the most controversial category of videos, which was mentioned by Tom and Tobias earlier. These are POV videos. The ones that we analyzed are ones where the creator plays the part of a victim or survivor of the Holocaust and places the viewer in a role in the narrative as well by the use of captions. In the first one, the scene on the left, the creator plays the part of an angel welcoming a victim of the Holocaust into heaven and plays the song Welcome to Wonderland. This video is a bit problematic because her conception of heaven does not necessarily match up with the theological conception of the afterlife in the Jewish tradition. In the second video, the creator plays a Jewish teenager in Germany, while the viewer is a German teenager who falls in love with her, and the video, through the use of montage and costume changes, documents the course of their relationship over the rise of fascism in Germany. She uses captions in both Hebrew and English in this video, which is odd because neither of those are languages that teenagers in Germany would be speaking in the 1930s. And she also uses song as well to create part of the narrative. In the third video, the creator plays the part of an Anne Frank museum exhibition while the viewer is a visitor of her museum. She uses multiple layers of text to contextualize Anne Frank's life, says that may their memory be a blessing, and has a disclaimer on the video, which is small, so I'll read it out. This is not meant to offend anyone. This is not about their death. It's the story of her bravery and how she was inspired to write a book about those horrific times. It also uses instrumental music, which is more like something which would be used in a museum, and though it's not perfect, it shows that there is a capacity to use TikTok to create high quality content. The fourth category of videos is critical responses to POV videos, which shows that there is discourse within the app about the efficacy of these videos, and some of them are serious, others are less serious, such as this one, which criticizes the welcome to heaven trope that's used in a lot of POV videos. And the last category is videos that advocate for human rights issues, such as modern anti-Semitism, as seen on the right, with using the song Zignat Kimmel, which is a Yiddish resistance song, and the video on the left, which compares the Holocaust to the genocide against Uyghur Muslims in China now. The creator urges the viewers that not learning from history condemns us to repeat mistakes. Have we already forgotten the Holocaust?
Sorry for the delay. As some of you know, when you're searching for the unmute button while you're also sharing slides, it can be a challenge. So I'm going to wrap up quickly with some forms of advocacy that we think can be effective on TikTok that have relations to previous forms of visual culture created by young people around the Holocaust. So there are, as I just said, various precedents for young people's engagement with the Holocaust in a sort of visual format. Here are just 3 examples, one of which we heard about yesterday. During the Holocaust itself, Kindertransport children in England created drawings that were featured in exhibitions in both London and New York under the title The War as Seen by Children. These were cases where teachers encouraged the young people in their care to draw pictures related to their experience. This is just one of many with the caption "In Poland Now," and you see, I believe, the Grim Reaper on the center. I don't have a full description of this, but you see the moon and stars frowning in the background. A more recent project, the Children's Holocaust Memorial in Whitwell, Tennessee. This is what's sometimes described as a sort of metonymic Holocaust memorial because it started with a plan to collect 6 million paper clips in homage to the 6 million dead from the Holocaust. It's now reached, I believe, 30 million, so it also exhibits some of the limits of that kind of one-for-one representation. But there are connections, I think, with different kinds of commemoration of other acts of genocide, such as the use of coffee cups, empty coffee cups, to commemorate victims of Srebrenica in the conflict in the Balkans. And interestingly, I only recently discovered from Oren Baruch-Stier's work, the Children's Holocaust Memorial started through an internet search by students in a class trying to figure out a way to commemorate the Holocaust. So it's a very early form of the digital becoming the tangible. Finally, we heard Victoria talk about the E-Holocaust project yesterday. This was one of the controversies that I think directly preceded the Holocaust Challenge controversy. And as you can see, this is a person standing on the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe in Berlin doing yoga. The caption is, "Yoga is a connection with everything around us." And this German-Israeli artist, Shahak Shapira, photoshopped in a picture of a mass, I believe a mass shooting site during the Holocaust into the background. As Victoria said, this still exists online, and though we've edited out this sort of contact information for this person, I believe that's still available online as well. So it raises serious challenges for thinking about the ethics of researching, but also the ethics of journalism around young people's engagement with the Holocaust in digital format. I will say of these three, that's the one where evidently there was no sort of adult supervision, to use a sort of antiquated term, for the creation of this. So given these precedents, we should ask what kinds of engagements and advocacy TikTok is suited for. I'm going to wrap up in about a minute, I think. First, there's three. TikTok that we've encountered. TikTok has features that make it well suited for communal acknowledgements of the Shoah during anniversaries, commemorations, or educational campaigns. Here we have two sort of visually quite comparable images. The left-hand one is a video produced officially for the UK's Holocaust Memorial Day commemoration on YouTube that puts together a lot of people doing a communal acknowledgement, both political leaders and sort of ordinary citizens. And you can do the same thing quite easily on TikTok with the stitching and duet feature. So on the right-hand side, you have a communal acknowledgement of mental health advocacy. You could do the same thing quite easily for acknowledging the Shoah. Second, these features make it possible to create videos that suggest the scope and scale of the Holocaust. In Leah's presentation, she noted that museums have often done this through the convention of putting a lot of the same objects, such as shoes, into a small space to sort of communicate the scale, even though you could never get 6 million pairs of shoes into a small space. The same sort of visual convention can be done on TikTok, where you can have a crowded screen to indicate the scope and scale, even though you're crowding with tens or dozens rather than with hundreds of thousands and millions. And finally, just this year, TikTok sort of institutionally tried to promote intergenerational exchanges of memory. So this is a video that you can find on TikTok now, if you search for it, of a fourth generation survivor, the great-grandson of Lily Ebert. She's telling her story sort of first personally. He's reading from what appears to be a sort of script that's been prepared in advance. So she's speaking from memory. He's speaking from a little bit of educated memory about his grandparents' experience. We're just going to leave you with this quote from Gary Weissman that inspires the title of our talk, which might sound very critical, but I think the core is this idea: things feel most real to us when we can see or experience them for ourselves. With the Holocaust, this proves most difficult. TikTok appears to give people an opportunity to do that. Thanks very much for your attention. I hope I didn't go too far over time.
Thank you so much. This was great and right on time. Yeah, you have 15 minutes. 15 seconds. You could think about it. So now we're turning to our last speaker in this panel. To Gila Oren, a PhD, is a senior lecturer and head of marketing studies, as well as a faculty member at the School of Business Administration, the College of Management. She serves as an official Yad Vashem guide in Poland, and she focused on her PhD in a dissertation on heritage sites visitation experience, and specifically in relation to Auschwitz-Birkenau. And today she will speak about offspring's faces on Facebook. Please.
You see the screen? Hi, you see the screen? You see one slide? It's okay? You're free. So hi, everybody. I'm really happy. I'm really happy, excited even to be here. And actually the fact that, you know, the subject of the conference is actually very optimistic because it's in a way preparing for the future and to what memory of Shoah has to deal with. So I'll just, I want to put us in context. And actually, this is my family. This is me and my parents. I'm an only child to both Holocaust survivors. And that's actually the context of why I'm trying to look into what's going on in this subject of second generation. And that's the context of the research. And actually, I'm exploring the second generation Facebook groups and hope to offer some kind of conceptualization to this idea, to what's going on in this area. So of course, I'll do it very briefly, like, you know, everybody, you know, we all share, we all participate in Facebook groups. Actually, the data claims that each one of us is having like 19 Facebook groups and actively participating in one or two. It became very popular lately, but it's not only the demand part that is making a group more interesting, but it's also Zuckerberg himself that is actually now giving more attention to groups and aiming that people will participate more in communities. So it's actually from both sides. People go on Facebook groups, they socialize, they entertain themselves, they self-status seeking, they're sharing information, a lot of sharing information. It's a very effective tool for awareness raising, for even fundraising, support seeking, a lot of support groups. And what else is that it's very interesting for the commercial industry. Every brand manager would like to have a Facebook group with high engagement. So Facebook groups is very hectic and a very central thing of what's going on now on online. Maybe not as, I don't know what's more, TikTok or Facebook, but anyway, it's very hectic, and especially if you speak about a bit of older people and not just young people. So research, so when did the research on Holocaust second generation start? So actually it started around the 1960s, and it had to do with the German compensation, because when the German compensation started, so the issue wasn't only compensation for physical or for physical damage, but also for mental damage. And when they started looking at the mental damage of Holocaust survivors, so here that raised the issue of second generation and of transgenerational transmission of post-trauma. The research concerning second generation is usually expressing high rate of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, and a lot of, I don't want to say bad, you know, not a positive way of looking at it. But, and from the 60s, we also experienced a lot of artistic creation of second generation. I put here just very few of them, but really there is so much in all kinds of genres, with music, with Ashes and Dust and cartoons, and Nava Semel, which actually started this whole thing. And there's a lot of creation, and also most of the creation is actually emphasizing how difficult it was to have such parents as Holocaust survivors. So this is the context, like what was done in on second generation. When you look deeper or closer to this research on Holocaust second generation, so there are actually two main groups. One is the homogeneous perspective. It's research that looks at second generation on one hand, and they compare those groups to non-second generation groups. And they take different variables, and they check whether it's what's the difference between the second generation and the non-second generation. That's the homogeneous perspective. The other perspective has a more heterogeneous perspective, and that's the kind of grading second generation, usually by their parents' stories. It means separating whether it's two parents Holocaust survivors or one parent Holocaust survivor, and what family structure has more impact on the post-traumatic transmission for the second generation. And another genre, a new genre, relatively new genre in this heterogeneous perspective, is the fact that actually enables the second generation themselves decide how much they are second generation, how they are impacted by the Holocaust, and how much how strong it affects their life. And it's a way of democratizing the right to be second generation. And that led me to this thing of Facebook group. When you look at the Facebook groups of second generation, so there are quite a lot of groups, but there are two main big groups. One of them is the open public group, an open group. By the way, they're very similar in the names. One of the public group is Second Generation to Holocaust Survivors, initiated in 2010, which is when the groups were started. Actually, they have 10,000. The group has 10,000 members, and a closed group, much more active, is Yes, I'm Second Generation to Holocaust. In Hebrew, it's really the same, having 9,600 members, initiated in 2014. We have a lot of other smaller groups. A lot of them surrounded around the origin of the group, like Częstochowa, Łódź, Krakow, people from Warsaw. This is a very small group, and other very small group, but really with very few members, like few hundreds only. There's another maybe important thing going on with this, is this the more institutional organization, Next Generation to Holocaust Terrorism Legacy in Israel, a more institutional organization. Being a member actually costs money. They have 2,300 members in the group, and they're not very active on the social media, but they're very active in reality. They have courses, they have conferences, there's a lot going on there, but they're not very active on social media. What I did is, first I interviewed 14 second generation. I interviewed more than once the admins of the big groups, and actually we did content analysis of the text on the wall of the Facebook, and we even applied textual analysis with a software called Voyamat that can show connections between text on a running text. So that's what we actually did. Further, I was actually becoming, and I somehow convinced her to become an admin of this closed group. And then I thought I would have more data than actually Zuckerberg allows, but doesn't matter. This closed group has 9,600 members. One very dominant admin. The gender, mainly women, 72% of the participants are women. Age range, not TikTok style. The 58% are more than 55 years old, 35% are 65%, older than 65. And it's a very active group. They have an average of 6 posts daily. Each post have average of 200 reactions, not each post, but daily reaction. The activity rate of the group is 77%, which is very high. It means that most participants are actually active on the group. Engagement rate of 2.7. And group activity is larger on weekends, larger on Saturdays, larger on afternoon and evenings, and much larger on Holocaust Day, and when things are getting tough, like with the Meron tragedy, or when the war was like I don't know how you say it in English, the Mivtza Chomot, so when things are getting hard, so the group is much more hectic. So what we found in this data collection. First of all, there is a change. It's like as if we have a second generation of the second generation. Once one of them said, for years, I didn't see myself as second generation. Now it's all I see. It seems that it's rather either the death of the parents, the third generation that passed away, the getting older of their own children, the more time they have, they're getting older of themselves, and suddenly they have a new perspective on this being a second generation. Now I'm active on this issue. In the past, it did not interest me at all. I'm now active in many events related to Holocaust remembrance. I'm also active on the Facebook groups. People are declaring being more active and declaring some kind of change during the time. The second thing that was came out from the data is the fact that those who understand, it's a phrase that that we heard really a lot. Even in the description of the group, it says the understanding that a stranger will never understand. I have the same history with people I don't know. We grew up the same way, even though we are in different places. It means this group is centered about something that is not actually clear, but it's something that only members of the group understand. Someone which is not in the group, someone which is not part of this community doesn't understand what the group is about, what are the pains, etc. So this is the two central findings of the group. Now we want to see what is the subjects that are spoken in the group. There are three main subjects. One of them is information. It's an unbelievable everything. They say everything on the group, which is very interesting, is that they keep saying like historical knowledge reminders, as if they won't say it on the wall of the group, so we wouldn't know that they are kind of history agents. They tell a lot of history on the wall of the group, even though it's a small group. It's the news. It's on the news, and they keep saying they continue saying it on the group itself. That's one thing. They tell about exhibitions, about books, about events concerning the Holocaust and the remembrance of the Holocaust. This is one thing that you can see a lot on the wall of the group. That's one thing. The other thing, which is really you can't imagine how much, is the commemoration. It's really everybody commemorate everybody. They commemorate their parents. They commemorate the communities. They put pictures of family with lines and telling the names of the people. As actually what something when okay, I'll say it in a minute. So a lot of commemoration for people and for communities. This is the second thing. The third thing that is very common, and it was more common in the beginning of the group. Now we see it a bit less, but I brought here something that was published just a few days ago, and I personally found very touching. One of my arguments it's the third one of my arguments with my father when I was around 30 years old, a mother of 3 children, I said to him, "You never told me you love me." Silence, and my father with tears appeared in my father's blue eyes, and then came his reply: all those that I loved, God took from me. How sad it is that my father was afraid to love me so that God would not take me from him. I found so much love and power in that sentence. I'm 71 years old today and still remember his exact words and how they made me feel. And this is right, and this is just published a few days ago, of a lady 71 years old, referring to something that happened 40 years ago. A lot of personal memories, commemoration, etc. I didn't mention that the fact that all the commemoration is always going together with them being heroes. And okay, another thing which is interesting in this group, that it's dripping from online to offline. It doesn't happen. It's not happening only online. It is also happening offline, which is also common in Facebook communities and group. That it's not all on the web and in a closed environment of the internet. They travel to Hungary. They have some meetings concerning food. They have support groups, and there's not so much, but there's not much, but there's a lot going on, not only online, but also offline. So I want to sum. I was really fast now. First of all, members see themselves as historic agents. They carry responsibility to tell the story, not only the personal story, but the historic story. That's one thing. The second thing, which is very interesting, is the democratization of memory and commemoration. Things that used to belong to those in power are now democratized to the people. The people on the wall, they commemorate their family. They write their personal stories, and this power doesn't belong to few. It now belongs to many. That's one thing. The other very interesting thing is that there's a kind of a convergence from shame to pride. I didn't read those quotes, but a lot of them say that they were ashamed and embarrassed with their parents, and now they're pride, and now they're heroes. First of all, it's a change. They apologize, And in some ways, it's what actually privately happening, what used to happen to Israel's state that was apologizing towards the survivors, that Israel didn't treat them well in the beginning. And somehow those children of Holocaust survivors now apologize to their parents that they didn't have enough respect. They didn't, also, you know, a lot of people say they didn't want to hear the story, etc. The group acts as a support group, which is very common in Facebook groups. Really, a lot of sicknesses, sports, whatever, a lot of Facebook groups are support groups. But actually, what I found very interesting is the question whether, or can we look at this, I assume a lot of you know the imagined communities of Anderson. This is a concept that was established towards nations. He actually said that the nations are imagined communities, and there's a lot of research is looking at Facebook groups as imagined communities. They compare imagined communities of Anderson and what's happening in this fans Facebook group, in immigrants Facebook groups, in sickness, in all kinds of illnesses Facebook groups, and they see those Facebook groups as imagined communities. And if you look at those Facebook groups of second generation and you consider to address them or to analyze them as imagined communities, so there's a lot of similarities. The fact that people don't know each other, the fact which is a horizontal speaking methods, the turn in history from religion to secularism. And again, we call Holocaust survivors sometimes Holocaust martyrs. We talk to them as holy, and now it's the emptiness and the secularism of the second generation. This is also something which is common between Anderson and this and the offspring Facebook groups. There's also the support of technology that Anderson speaks about, the print, and here is the web and the Facebook groups. But there is one thing which is happening in this imagined groups of Anderson and a lot of other Facebook groups, and is not so clear here. And this is the organizing theme. The fact that the second generation itself don't really know yet, themselves don't really know what it is. And actually, I summarize it in a way that it's actually imagined community under construction. It's not there yet, it's not a community, but a lot is happening there, and we are establishing some kind of imagined community with flexible boundaries, but clear, that you know who is in and who is out and what is in the group. That's it. And the limite, okay.
Thank you so much, Gila.
I was very fast, huh?
And so we came to the final part of this panel. We'll have about 10 minutes for questions, and of course we're going to be collecting questions, so please be as brief as possible. If you're not sure you can be brief, just write the questions down and send them on chat, whatever is best for you. And yes, who wants to be first? And again, I will be collecting.
We have one question in the chat. So yeah, the second one just arrived.
Okay, does anyone want to ask in addition to that? Use the time for the reading to focus on our multi.
I will ask a question. So as I said when we opened the session, the subject of our conference is digital Holocaust memory from the margins. And I would urge all four speakers to think about this theme and its relevancy to their presentations. So it's more of a general question to all of you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Stefania, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, please. Hello, everybody. I especially enjoyed the two presentations about the TikTok events because I have been working in the field of social media, education for social media for 10 years now. So I was specifically intrigued by the educational implications of using TikTok for Holocaust education. But what I saw was that nobody mentioned schools, Holocaust education at schools, okay? Everybody mentioned museums, memorials, Holocaust centers, but nobody mentioned schools. While I'm specifically interested in and focused on education at schools, I just wonder if you have any specific indications or recommendations for using social media such as TikTok for Holocaust education in schools. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a few questions already for the TikTokers, so feel free to answer.
Maybe I would approach to Victoria's question about the interviews I see on the chat. Well, actually, that is a very good question, and it is still a very challenging to approach as much as users we can. As you already know, most of the videos were deleted from TikTok. The creators were so ashamed and were lambasted with feedbacks, with negative feedbacks from institution, from users, from all over. So it was kind of a race against time. Once this trend started, we just started to document with print screens and the names of the users. We just started to really trace the users on TikTok and approach them, try to approach them on Instagram. So it was kind of like we had to move between platforms in order to really contact the creators. They don't really, the interaction on TikTok with a specific user is very weak. So you can follow him, but the connection is you cannot really send him a message that you will see very fast if he has a very interactive and engaging account. So what we did was to trace them on Instagram, and we connected them through Instagram, and which was more accessible for communication. And from making some of those interviews already on Zoom, I can tell you that we've been exposed to very traumatized souls of young creators, are very traumatized from what they have gone through with the feedbacks. And so this is their kind of a way for them to respond and to react to what they were the original attention in doing that. So they kind of like used our conversation with them as a way to officially react to and respond to all of the critics that they've got. So it was a very fascinating process, and still is a very fascinating process, because we have more interviews to conduct.
I'll jump in from our perspective, and then I'm going to gesture towards our Zoomer on my panel, Katie, at the end to give her perspective, because I'm a late millennial. We didn't use interviews, we used a survey, and we were operating in the US context where we were using the IRB process. And as many of you may know, much more stringent ethics guidelines for contacting under 18 research subjects or participants than over 18. So we used a process where we're only in touch with people who are over 18 years of age. This speaks a little bit to Victoria's comments yesterday about the sort of vulnerability, particularly of really young people becoming research subjects. So we partially made this decision for matters of convenience for getting this research done, but partially because we are aware that we don't want to promote people to share their thoughts about what they've done if they're under 18. And we have significant questions about publication, even of screenshots of some of these videos. I think that speaks to some of the questions that were raised. Ronnie, we did try to speak about marginality of these users, but I think to connect with Stefania's point, some of the earlier iterations of classrooms, teachers using visual materials or visual projects to communicate about the Holocaust are very controlled. So the case of the paperclip example, Oren Steer talks about that, and he says, initially the kids came up with the idea, we'll melt down all of these paperclips when we're done and create something out of them. And then he says, well, the teachers sort of thought about this and said, well, that actually looks like a bad idea because that would replicate, the use of fire in the crematoria, right? Whether or not that's an accurate comparison, I'm not sure. So I do wonder whether teachers are concerned about a lack of control of the content that their students create for classroom purposes. If it then goes online, can they actually provide safety for their students? So whether or not that's the right way of looking at it. I come from a college education perspective, not a post-secondary, not a secondary education, so there might be differences. The last point I'll say, and then I'll turn it to Katie, I'm interested more broadly in the use of what I think of as visual interventions to try to get people to think in new ways about genocide and mass atrocity. I think a lot of times teachers, like journalists, like other professionals doing work in this way, really want to do new things visually or multimodally in order to get not only their students, but people in their broader communities to think more broadly. I think of TikTok as an effective means of doing that in some ways, but anytime you're trying to change or go against the conventions of representation, you risk pushback from various audiences. And Katie, do you have any specific comments about what the contact has been like with the TikTokers that you've been reaching out to through our process?
Yeah, like Tom mentioned, it has been pretty difficult to reach people on TikTok because if the person isn't following you back, then they won't see your messages immediately, and you can only send up to 3 messages to a person before they follow you back. I'm not sure what the feelings of the people we reach out to are, but I kind of guess that maybe some people aren't responding because they're afraid that they'll be judged or criticized because of their engagement with the Holocaust, because of how critical people were of the POV challenge. But I have been able to reach out to some people, and they've had a lot of concerns about how their information will be used, if they'll be able to be anonymous. And we've only collected 2 survey responses so far, so we're still at the very beginning of this process.
So maybe to follow up also with Stefania's question. So our main focus is really on the kind of visual content and how far the TikTok POV provides new ways or different ways of communicating the memory of the Holocaust on social media platforms, but we are still very interested in this educational perspectives. And as some of the interviews showed, this is actually really a topic. I think we come very much from this idea that memorials, so to say, have a function of kind of being multiplying, so to say. So then the memorials will address the teachers, and so you start with the memorials, and then they might also go to teachers and offer them ways how to deal with this issue. But of course, this is quite an important aspect. And as far as I know, also some teachers are active on TikTok and try to utilize the platform also for kind of dealing with historical topics. So this of course is also something to keep in mind, that that more and more the platform becomes a place also where stakeholders and other kind of influencers start to engage with.
I would just add to what Tobias just mentioned, that there are some brilliant examples on TikTok of history teachers who are cultivating their students' engagement with social media, and they are asking their students to be involved in content they are uploading, and they are really playing with history narratives in a TikTok aesthetic way, which is really remarkable. And so we can really see how education migrates into TikTok in those aspects. And to address what Sarah wrote here in the chat, it also can cost a backlash of content that will be kind of like used for user. It will be used as a material for Holocaust denial. But I think that specifically in the case of institutions that are trying to be more engaged on TikTok, they are trying to be very responsible and very cautious about how they are mediating this content in TikTok. And of course, it's social media, so we cannot be completely, it's not completely safe environment. So you cannot control how the content is being circulated in TikTok. So it's also an important aspect here. And if to follow on that, on Sarah's question, it's really interesting because we we zoomed in on so many POV Holocaust challenges videos, and we unpacked all kinds of behaviors and features and symbols there, and we saw that basically the side of the perpetrator, the side of the Nazis, wasn't really wasn't represented in a figurative way, because the character was always the victim, and when they played the Nazi side, it was usually represented by text or by any kind of a movement, when they're like reacted in fear or resisted with their body. So you could feel the presence of the Nazi, you can feel the presence of someone is attacking you, but the creators were victims, and we couldn't really observe this interplay between characters very much. And regarding the aspect of Sarah in the Holocaust denial, if those videos was kind of like adapted to this topic, so we couldn't notice any kind of like Holocaust denial messages there. We saw how they are adopting very certain narratives of the Holocaust. Let's say they focused very deep with the showers. The showers was like a very popular trauma they were adapting into their videos, but it wasn't kind of like disrespecting in a way. It was they used it as a narrative tool to convey their authentic performance. Of course, that they always want engagement, so there is this aspect of I want to be the most creative that I can be, but they are doing memory while trying to be the most creative they can be and trying to reach for the For You page. So some memory work is being done here, although they are relying on I want likes, I want shares, I want engagement, I want to be circulated. So this is this fascinating tension here.
Thank you so much. We'll have to stop because this has been a wonderfully not on time panel. Thank you all for all your contributions. You can of course continue to speak on Zoom, so to zoom back in. There are a lot of wonderful questions. Just one thing that I want to add, also maybe to what Tom just said. Of course, we need to also, in relation to the lecture yesterday, to also think a little bit beyond questions of narrative and representation. Also in this case, and I know you have been, and also in relation to genre, but I actually found it very interesting to connect all of these questions to what Leah said in relation to desire and objects. But this is for our next discussion. Thank you, and I will see you all in the next panel in 15 minutes.
Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you, Kobi, for chairing this fascinating panel, and thanks to all the participants. Please come back on time and have a nice break.